Fire Force was one of my most anticipated anime of 2019. A shonen with cool fire powers, a dope art style, and done by David Production? Why yes, don't mind if I do. Now if you're then wondering why I'm just getting around to talking about it a year after it started airing, I admittedly just finished season 1 a couple months ago after I took a bit of an anime hiatus last fall into this winter. But more than that, I wasn't super sure I wanted to talk about it at all for a while, as most of the previous videos on this channel are things I unabashedly love. And, well, you've read the video title. I like Fire Force, but I don't love it, and that frustrates me. And that's ultimately how we wound up here, and with season 2 right around the corner, there's never been a better time for me to talk through my feelings. First, I do think it's important to mention all the positives this show does have, as I do like it. I think it's important to repeat that. The setting is incredible with a fascinating history and stunning steampunk world that we've only scratched the surface of so far. All the pyrokinesis is awesome and really varied, leading to the occasional JoJo's level of insane fight. I love all the villain designs, and the infernal designs even more actually. The show gave us Inferno, so actually it's a 10 out of 10, I take it back. And while it is an incredibly obvious, somewhat overplayed thematic device, I do have a soft spot for Shinra looking kinda like a devil but wanting to be a hero. I'm a simple man sometimes, what can I say? Can we also take a moment to appreciate that they got Mamoru Miyano and Kenjiro Suda, probably my two favorite seiyuu behind Yuki Kaiji for Benimaru and Joker respectively? Also, Aoyuki is here as Tamaki, shout out to Radiant, and oh, also the new king of shonen apparently, Gakuto Kajiwara, Asta's VA, is Shinra. Welcome to the Be More Brass extended universe apparently. I could keep going, but just know that the voice cast is dummy thick. But now for the things that make me sad. The biggest issue that I ran into while watching is that the show consistently undercuts many of its potentially cool moments, often for comedic effect. Whether it's Arthur being stupid, Maki's Gorilla Cyclops bit, or Shinra and Arthur disagreeing, it just starts to drag you out of the action. And it's frustrating because the action itself is really good, but it leads to a bit of a weird viewing experience where I was on edge during some scenes, not from the tension, but from wondering if I was going to be interrupted. And this brings us to the cat-shaped elephant in the room, Tamaki. There is no better example of what I just mentioned than the Shinra Rekka fight about 10 episodes in. It has a super cool Shinra entrance, great choreography, interesting fighting styles, and is the first time the plot really substantially peaks early on. And yet it held next to no emotional weight for me when I watched it because all the Tamaki scenes had already broken my immersion. The first time they do it is bad enough. You know, hilarious anime trope gag during the fight, look how quirky this show is. But then they double and triple down on the bit. At best, it distracts from the flow of an otherwise compelling fight, and at worst, it insults my intelligence. This is the point where many people I know dropped the show entirely, and I don't blame them. It's a fight that ultimately leaves you kinda going, well, that was dumb, instead of the intended, that was so cool. And a lot of the time, that's how the show made me feel overall. Dumb fun is still fun, but it lacks the emotional investment level that I personally need to really dive headfirst into a show. But let's actually discuss Tamaki for a second because she frustrates me to no end. Her design is one thing, don't know how that helps protect her from the fires, but whatever, I don't need logic in my shonen. Her quote-unquote ability is very stupid, and perhaps the most blatant use of a nonsensical plot device to justify consistent fan service I've ever seen. But what ultimately gets me is her entire usage as a character in season 1. She serves such little purpose to the actual story that it's kind of startling. Side characters don't inherently need to be important, but if you're going to put one on display like this, you need to justify it somehow. Do I think giving her a legitimately cool scene forgives all the other stuff I just mentioned? No. But it would at least give her a character. What makes this worse, and the reason I'm talking about this so much, is that last arc of season 1. Basically, every member of the cast gets a big hype fight or moment, with Maki's and the lieutenants being two of my favorites in the entirety of the season. Meanwhile, Tamaki gets a scene that borders on satire at this point, and then they bait us so hard with what appears to be a real, actual fight and cool moment, and then they just pull the rug out. just the hardest rug pull I have ever seen. It's very frustrating, for lack of a more appropriate term to use here. Easily my favorite arc from season 1 was the Asakusa arc, because I love Benimaru, but also in no small part to Tamaki playing a tiny role and having her ability mostly turned off. If you're only going to use her for quote-unquote comedy, then it's better if she barely shows up at all. I also want to make it clear that she is not my only issue with the show, as I think the pacing early on is kind of bizarre, particularly some of the stuff with Hibana, and the direction in those episodes is a bit off. It kind of felt like they went in on a more unique style in order to strengthen the emotion in scenes, and unfortunately it did the opposite and distracted more than helped. More importantly, I'd like to say that the more literal translation of Enen no Shobutai, or Blazing Firefighting Corps, is way cooler than the actual English title, but that doesn't really matter. I don't think that Tamaki's existence just makes this a terrible show, but whenever she's prominently featured on screen, it just pulls me out of whatever the show is trying to do. I hope, I really do, that her writing and honestly a lot of the side characters improve as we move on in this story. There's a solid base in place in this world, and I desperately want it to be able to live up to its potential. When this show is at its best, it's not attempting to be overly comedic or anything that it's not. It's providing kick-ass set pieces, interesting lore, intriguing plot twists, and well-animated fire. If you go in expecting a fun romp with cool fights and interesting powers, I think it delivers, but if you're looking for deep, fleshed-out characters and emotional moments, hopefully Season 2 provides that? My manga friends have told me that the ending of Season 1 is when they really started getting invested in the story, so hopefully Season 2 will be able to fully immerse me back into this world. The last couple episodes were by far my favorites plot-wise, so I do have hope. But for now, at least, I feel like we're still dealing with a bit of kindling, not a full bonfire just yet.